A widespread assumption, which nearly everybody in our society accepts, the non-religious included, is that religious faith is especially vulnerable to offence and should be protected by an abnormally thick wall of respect, in a different class from the respect that any human being should pay to any other. Douglas Adams put it so well in an impromptu speech made in Cambridge shortly before his death that I never tire of sharing his words.
Religion has certain ideas at the heart of it which we call sacred or holy or whatever. What it means is, here is an idea or a notion that you're not allowed to say anything bad about. You're just not. Why not? Because you're not. If somebody votes for a party that you don't agree with, you're free to argue about it as much as you like. Everybody will have an argument, but nobody feels aggrieved by it. If somebody thinks taxes should go up or down, you're free to have an argument about it. But on the other hand, if somebody says, I mustn't move a light switch on a Saturday, you say, I respect that. Why should it be that it's perfectly legitimate to support the Labour Party or the Conservative Party, Republicans or Democrats, this model of economics versus that, Macintosh instead of Windows, but to have an opinion about how the universe began, about who created the universe? No, that's holy. We are used to not challenging religious ideas, but it's very interesting how much of a furore Richard creates when he does it. Everybody gets absolutely frantic about it, because you're not allowed to say these things. Yet when you look at it rationally, there's no reason why those ideas shouldn't be as open to debate as any other, except that we have agreed somehow between us that they shouldn't be.
Here's a particular example of our society's overweening respect for religion, one that really matters. By far the easiest grounds for gaining conscientious objector status in wartime are religious. You can be a brilliant moral philosopher with a prize-winning doctoral thesis expounding the evils of war and still be given a hard time by a draft board evaluating your claim to be a conscientious objector. Yet, if you can say that one or both of your parents is a Quaker, you sail through like a breeze, no matter how inarticulate and illiterate you may be on the theory of pacifism or indeed Quakerism itself.
At the opposite end of the spectrum from pacifism, we have a pusillanimous reluctance to use religious names for warring factions. In Northern Ireland, Catholics and Protestants are euphemised to nationalists and loyalists, respectively. The very word religions is Bowdlerised to communities, as in inter-community warfare. Iraq, as a consequence of the Anglo-American invasion of 2003, degenerated into sectarian civil war between Sunni and Shia Muslims. Clearly a religious conflict. Yet in The Independent of the 20th of May 2006, the front-page headline and first leading article both described it as ethnic cleansing. Ethnic in this context is yet another euphemism. What we are seeing in Iraq is religious cleansing. The original usage of ethnic cleansing in the former Yugoslavia is also arguably a euphemism for religious cleansing involving Orthodox Serbs, Catholic Croats and Muslim Bosnians.
I have previously drawn attention to the privileging of religion in public discussion of ethics in the media and in government. Whenever a controversy arises over sexual or reproductive morals, you can bet that religious leaders from several different faith groups will be prominently represented on influential committees or on panel discussions on radio or television. I'm not suggesting that we should go out of our way to censor the views of these people, but why does our society beat a path to their door, as though they had some expertise comparable to that of, say, a moral philosopher, a family lawyer, or a doctor?
Here's another weird example of the privileging of religion. On the 21st of February 2006, the United States Supreme Court ruled that a church in New Mexico should be exempt from the law, which everybody else has to obey, against the taking of hallucinogenic drugs. Faithful members of the Centro Espírita Beneficiente União do Vegetal believed that they can understand God only by drinking Huasca tea, which contains the illegal hallucinogenic drug dimethyltryptamine. Note that it is sufficient that they believe that the drug enhances their understanding. They do not have to produce evidence. Conversely, there is plenty of evidence that cannabis eases the nausea and discomfort of cancer sufferers undergoing chemotherapy. Yet the Supreme Court ruled in 2005 that all patients who use cannabis for medicinal purposes are vulnerable to federal prosecution, even in the minority of states where such specialist use is legalized. Religion, as ever, is the trump card. Imagine members of an art appreciation society pleading in court that they believe they need a hallucinogenic drug in order to enhance their understanding of impressionist or surrealist paintings. Yet when a church claims an equivalent need, it is backed by the highest court in the land. Such is the power of religion as a talisman.
17 years ago, I was one of 36 writers and artists commissioned by the magazine New Statesman to write in support of the distinguished author Salman Rushdie, then under sentence of death for writing a novel. Incensed by the sympathy for Muslim hurt and offence expressed by Christian leaders and even some secular opinion formers, I drew the following parallel. If the advocates of apartheid had their wits about them, they would claim, for all I know truthfully, that allowing mixed races is against their religion. A good part of the opposition would respectfully tiptoe away. And it's no use claiming that this is an unfair parallel because apartheid has no rational justification. The whole point of religious faith, its strength and chief glory, is that it does not depend on rational justification. The rest of us are expected to defend our prejudices, but ask a religious person to justify their faith, and you infringe religious liberty. Little did I know that something pretty similar would come to pass in the 21st century. The Los Angeles Times, 10th of April 2006, reported that numerous Christian groups on campuses around the United States were suing their universities for enforcing anti-discrimination rules, including prohibitions against harassing or abusing homosexuals. As a typical example, in 2004, James Nixon, a 12-year-old boy in Ohio, won the right in court to wear a T-shirt to school bearing the words, "Homosexuality is a sin, Islam is a lie, abortion is murder, some issues are just black and white." The school told him not to wear the T-shirt, and the boy's parents sued the school. The parents might have had a conscionable case if they based it on the First Amendment's guarantee of freedom of speech, but they didn't. Indeed, they couldn't, because free speech is deemed not to include hate speech. But hate only has to prove it is religious, and it no longer counts as hate. So, instead of freedom of speech, the Nixons' lawyers appealed to the constitutional right to freedom of religion. Their victorious lawsuit was supported by the Alliance Defense Fund of Arizona, whose business it is to press the legal battle for religious freedom.
The Reverend Rick Scarborough, supporting the wave of similar Christian lawsuits, brought to establish religion as a legal justification for discrimination against homosexuals and other groups, has named it the civil rights struggle of the 21st century. Christians are going to have to take a stand for the right to be Christian. Once again, if such people took their stand on the right to free speech, one might reluctantly sympathize, but that isn't what it's about. The legal case in favor of discrimination against homosexuals is being mounted as a countersuit against alleged religious discrimination. And the law seems to respect this. You can't get away with saying, if you try to stop me from insulting homosexuals, it violates my freedom of prejudice, but you can get away with saying, it violates my freedom of religion. What, when you think about it, is the difference? Yet again, religion trumps all.
I'll end the chapter with a particular case study which tellingly illuminates society's exaggerated respect for religion over and above ordinary human respect. The case flared up in February 2006, a ludicrous episode which veered wildly between the extremes of comedy and tragedy.